And
So it's really cool. So you get
hmm
around everywhere?
yeah, I do. I believe I traveled to about 37 states within the year that I was Miss Wheelchair USA. So I got to see all of the US pretty much. And it's really interesting just seeing how people react to you in different areas of the country. Like, I got a different vibe from all kinds of people of how they responded to me using a wheelchair and how they respond to people with disabilities, and I thought that was really interesting.
Well, it's really cool. So you're, though, based in Asheville, is that right? Or
Yes.
Hendersonville or Asheville?
Asheville.
And how long
Yeah.
have you been in Asheville?
So I've pretty much been raised in Asheville my whole life. My mom moved here with me when I was a baby, and it was just the two of us growing up. I was growing up here in Asheville, and it was definitely difficult with her being a single mom early on. And then I was in the car accident, and we had to just learn how to survive together. So Asheville definitely holds a special place in my heart because it is where I went through this very long journey of becoming who I am
Now,
today.
in terms of Asheville, I'm curious that you've been all around the country now. Are some areas easier for you to get around than others?
Definitely, definitely. It's funny how the accessibility even changes just in different parts of our country alone. I would say when you get to some parts of the Midwest, there's some challenges, or even in parts of some of the rural areas like Texas or New Mexico, where there's not a lot of people and it's just a different world.
Well, I was even telling you off the air some work I'd done with Leadership Asheville, and we were looking at accessibility in terms of
Yeah.
Asheville, and some parts, I guess, are very good, but some parts, even like I think Lexington Avenue,
Yes.
are not real good. You know, it's very rocky, not a well paved street, or especially the sidewalks. That makes life difficult, doesn't it?
It definitely does. And just looking at here in Asheville, there you make an excellent point. Some places are completely different regarding how I can get around. Honestly, coming to downtown Asheville can be really intimidating because first of all, the hills are sometimes they're too steep for me to be able to push up alone. And then when you have really rocky, bumpy streets, it's hard for me to get over in a wheelchair. And when you're walking, you don't necessarily think about that.
Well, even your point's well taken. You don't even think about it. When we did this study years ago, amazing how many places didn't have curbs for,
Yeah,
you just think it's natural, but you need the curb to get up and down, I guess.
definitely.
Otherwise, it's almost impossible to go to.
Yeah, I've had to learn how to hop a few curbs in my wheelchair just because of necessity, but I would much rather not have to do that if possible.
How do you hop a chair?
So you just go really fast over the curb and then hope you land smoothly. I have gotten a concussion from doing that the wrong way,
Did you
but
really?
yes.
Wow, I mean, you're smiling about it, but that's a terrible story. You're thank goodness you were okay. What about
Yes.
also when you go into places like not just in Asheville, but around the country? Same thing, I guess. Some places are great, some places aren't so great.
Yes, exactly. And when you go to, it's almost when you have either extreme, if you have somewhere that's very rural or a, a large city, you can find that the accessibility can be a little off, right? So rural, there's not as many people there. There's not as much of the push for it. If it's a big city, then they're adapting to old infrastructure. So there can be a lot of steps into buildings and issues with apartments and hills and being able to park. So I would say whenever you get a midline area of somewhere that's newer, you're definitely going to be feeling like you have better accessibility.
It's also, I guess, tough for you and other folks as well that if buildings are old, because when did the law change on this?
So they passed a law in
Right.
1991.
But older buildings or restaurants or whatnot, are they grandfathered or?
Yeah, so it's a complicated system, but if a certain building has enough historical significance, then it is grandfathered into the and doesn't have to make the changes. So that makes it a little difficult. And there are several buildings downtown that have that
I was going to say
same,
that, yeah.
yeah.
and so they don't have to make accommodations, I guess, if, like you said, the grandfather.
Yes.
So is that something that is part? I'm curious. You were saying your Miss Wheelchair experiences.
Yeah.
What was your platform?
So my platform was actually the name of the organization that I have now. It was Live Boundless, and showing people how to make the most of their lives with what they have and overcome their disability. So obviously accessibility ties in with that because we have to be our own advocates to be able to get around and experience life to its fullest extent when you're looking at employment, when you're looking at tourism, or simply just living your daily life around your city. So it's a very important point when talking about being boundless.
When you find something that isn't up to par, or that
Yeah.
they're not, an organization especially isn't doing what they should, do you say something to them?
I actually do. So, for example, when last year I worked with an organization to bring more accessibility to Asheville and worked with the city of Asheville, and they made more accessible parking spaces in the parking garages and fixed some of the curb cuts around Asheville to be more accessible. So that was really cool to be able to do something that seemed small at first, but can actually make a really big difference for our city and for the people living in it.
Because what I found years ago, even in Asheville, I was surprised that a lot of places weren't up to par, which they should have been. You know, this
Yeah.
was way after 1991, and it was amazing. It's just the parking, things we take for granted.
Yeah.
But they didn't have enough handicapped spots, or we also found that they didn't have enough space for the spot, you know, like
Yeah.
for vans or something.
So that's an excellent point. And there are two things people don't think about a lot. And that's with, first of all, the one that you said with handicap parking. Those lines are so that people can get out of their car if they have a ramp that comes out of the van, which I actually have, or if you're manually taking out a chair or a walker, you need a lot of clearance room to be able to get out of your car. And it's funny, just a personal story. I only have one handicap parking space at my apartment that has the lines beside it, and there's somebody who parks in there every single day who walks fine. But it's the only one, so I have to park in two parking spaces in order to get out of the car. And I've gotten so many notes on my car saying like, "Don't park like this. What are you doing?" And I want to be like, this is my only option
Wait.
to be able to get out of my car.
So as a person who parks improperly or
Yeah.
illegally, is he called on it, or does he?
Well, she has a handicap placard, so
Right.
you know when they have that, no,
Right.
regardless of what their situation is, if they have that, then it's kind of a trump card for them to be able to say that they need it. So, you know, I'm hoping to be able to get another
I was going to say that.
parking space there.
Where haven't I seen some places that indicate for van accessible, or that, you, as you
Yeah.
point out, you need a larger space for somebody with a van and has to get the chair in and out.
Exactly. Yeah. So I definitely need all of that space, sometimes down to the very last foot, to be able to get out of the car and then not hit other people's cars, which is important too.
What can folks do, for example, who are aren't handicapped but want to work with you or your organization?
Yeah.
Do you welcome their help and involvement?
I definitely do. And it's been amazing the response that I've gotten by getting out in the community and hosting events of how people have started to come to me and say, we have people who are local who are looking for jobs or who are looking for opportunities to connect with other people because they feel really isolated, and to be able to lead or guide these people to have those options has been incredible. And if anybody wanted to come to reach out to me if they had accessibility concerns, I definitely have contacts in Asheville to be able to start to make changes. So please feel free to contact me.
So are you seeking that kind of help, or if people want to get involved?
Definitely, definitely.
Because something that amazes me, I want to talk a little bit about your organization, that for the most part, this is kind of like a one-person organization.
Yes.
Is it? So you started this back in 2016 or 17?
Officially in 17,
Right.
but when we got all of the paperwork, which if anybody has started a
I was about to say
nonprofit,
that.
they
Yeah.
know that it takes quite a long time. Uh, and they also know that it takes a while to be able to get it up and running. So I've definitely done a lot of the behind the scenes work, but I've had an amazing team who've helped me along the way as far as my board of directors. And then I've also partnered a lot with Rotary here locally, who, if anybody's worked with Rotary, you know that they are movers and shakers and know how to get things done. So it's really been just so many generous people in the Asheville area.
And you're seeking more people to get involved?
Yes, of course,
Okay.
always.
And so you're now a legitimate nonprofit?
Yes,
Is that
501c3.
We'll talk about that, then we'll come
Okay.
back to it. So if people want to get more information about your organization,
Yeah.
best bet is what?
So just go to liveboundless.org and then go to the contact me section and I'll get right back to you.
Okay, on Facebook also?
Yes, you can go to Madeline Elizabeth Delp. That is my official page as far as being able to reach me, but you can also go to Live Boundless.
As a Facebook page. Okay. And so let's talk a little bit then more about some of the things you've done. And I think you were telling me too, it just seems you've lived an amazing life, you know. But
Yeah.
it really changed. It changed when you got into college. Is that sort of when it started changing too?
It definitely did. So just to kind of set the scene of how it started out, as I mentioned earlier, I was the daughter of a single mother. I had a devastating injury. I couldn't get into my own house. You know, I was at a school where they basically said they didn't want to be wheelchair accessible, so it would be better if I found somewhere else to go. And just had a lot of negative forces in my life as far as certain family that were not being supportive, and even a church community that said that the accident was a fault of mine, like I was being punished. And that's
Oh,
a very personal story, but I want to tell you that because it shows how dark of a time, what a dark place that I was in at that point. And that lasted for years of feeling very ashamed of who I was and not knowing how I could possibly get out of what felt like a curse. And it took realizing that this thing that I was dealing with could be a strength if I let it be. And if I took it and used it to make me stronger and used it to make me braver and just looked at all the things that I could do, that I could just maximize my life potential. And that's what I
I won't.
did. Step by step.
I won't put you on the spot, but
Okay.
are you still active in that church?
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. No. That ended very long ago.
Yeah. Oh, is that terrible? The to make you feel that you were responsible. So, anyway, so since then, you had this epiphany, I guess. And when did that happen? Sort of when you were in college, you said?
So it's definitely gradual, but the biggest catalyst was just I had been, at the time, I'd been very sick. I'd had a lot of anxiety and stress and had to drop out of a whole semester of college, which, as any college student knows, is crazy intimidating, especially when you have student loans to pay. But I decided after I got out of my last ER visit that I was going to do something that totally turned my whole situation on its head and forced me to do something that made me grow and made me have something to fight for. So I went ahead and registered to study abroad in Germany. My mom was terrified. She didn't think that I was even healthy enough to go, but I prepared for my trip. It was the first time I ever flew alone, flying to Europe, got my apartment, started learning the language and going to school, and it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life because it was something I didn't think I could do, but then I did it. And that was one of the most important lessons I learned as far as the second that you face your biggest fear and you do it and you're okay, and you realize that those fears don't have power over you and that they're really not valid. They're just as as they're called, rational lies.
Now, how is Germany living abroad or living in a wheelchair? Or
Yeah.
not living in a wheelchair, but being in a wheelchair in Germany. How was that?
Well, one of the interesting things was when I was there, I did my whole senior thesis project on accessibility in Germany.
Well, this
So
was your senior year? Oh,
I was working for the senior thesis project that I
gotcha.
would need to do by the end of my time there at UNCA. And I studied all around Germany looking at their different cities and what it was like getting around in a chair. Even went into German law, which is not fun as only a couple of years of German, I can tell you. But what I ended up finding out was that they were actually moving pretty fast. They passed their law in, forgetting the year exactly, but I want to say about 2002, and had just made enormous gains as far as taking buildings that were over 1,000 years old and then adding an elevator right up to the side. Even Martin Luther's church, which hundreds and hundreds of years old, right? They had a way that I could somehow get up in there and actually see his bedroom where he, studied and did his daily devotions. And so that was really cool being able to have that experience, even with something very historical and old, but to still be privileged enough as someone with a disability to get in there. So I would speak very highly of what they're doing in Germany right now.
So I guess it made you aware, too, of the fact that anybody could change or any
Yeah.
organization if they want to.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that's key. So how were you received in Germany? This American with this blonde hair and, this great smile, and all of a sudden she's running around on her wheelchair.
Yeah.
Was the reception positive?
Well, the specific town that I was studying in was very small in the middle of Germany. It was called Wittenberg. And I think people didn't know what to think of me, honestly, because I didn't really see many people like me in this very small town. So I'm very smiley by nature and just smiling away, and that's not really the German way, to be honest. So
And
they
outgoing,
got a
too.
yeah, they got a kick out of me, I think. But once you get to know people and start those conversations, they're very open and want to help. Generally, I had a lot of people just offer to carry me up steps or into the train if I needed to, because sometimes I did come into hurdles where not everything was accessible, and it was really cool to somebody who's from a completely different culture than me just be willing to say, hey, how can we help you, was really awesome. So it's a good lesson in how initially people might not understand you, but you can still relate on a common ground of your humanity.
Well, your point's a good one in terms of carrying people up steps, because I have a good friend who's become a comedian, and I once tried to get him a gig in a comedy club. Goes
Yeah.
up a very high number of steps, and he didn't even want to be carried up. It's just we had to find a different location for him because it's almost
Yeah.
embarrassing to have carry. He's a big guy, a heavy guy, and it would have taken probably 4 guys to carry up the wheelchair. But I guess
Yeah.
you've been there where you've had to be carried up in a wheelchair.
Oh, definitely. I feel like I'm carried all the time for one reason or the other. And that's a really interesting point that you bring up, and how people view how they want to be treated.
Right.
And I have a pretty standard rule or advice that I would give someone, and that's just always take the road of offering help. And some people might honestly be offended. They might think, oh, I can do it all by myself. But I would rather you offer help to that person
Very
than
sweet.
not offer it to the struggling, 17-year-old who's trying to get her chair out of the car. It's the experience I had many, many times. So that's just my advice for
Good advice. His reaction was he was, I don't know, offended, but he didn't necessarily like it because he didn't like even the physical act of being carried up.
yeah. And some
Steps.
people are embarrassed by that, and I can
I'm
understand.
embarrassed. But I love your idea that I never thought about that. So when I see somebody carrying their chair out of their van or
Yeah.
car, offer to help them.
Yeah, just say, hey, is there anything that I can help you with? And
Great
people
advice.
feel your spirit about it too. Like, I know when somebody is just saying, like, oh, you're so cute and like
I don't get
sweet
I
inspirational
don't get that,
thing.
by the way, too much about being
Like
cute.
like sweet inspirational
No,
you're funny. Like in almost a demeaning way. You
right.
can feel it when somebody means that. But if they're saying, oh, I really, I want you look strong, but if there's anything I could do to help, please let me know. Or just a genuine compliment of saying, I really admire what you're doing. That means a lot more, and you can feel somebody's spirit behind it.
But thank you for the suggestion because I never thought of it. But that's really good advice. And just offer when do people offer you help?
And they do, yes.
Do you take it?
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, depending on the day. Because sometimes I'm fine, and sometimes I'm having a horrible day and I'm in pain, and I do need help.
Yeah. Or even if you're carrying stuff, I imagine it's
Yeah.
difficult to
Oh,
help,
yeah.
just offer to carry something.
Exactly. Like the other day, I was getting out of the grocery store and dropped all my fruit out and ran over it. So, if somebody had offered to help, I probably would have taken it that day.
Did somebody offer?
Somebody did help me pick up my stuff. Thank goodness.
Okay. But thank you for the advice.
Yeah.
Let me ask you another question too, because I'm fascinated by your story.
Yeah.
That I guess over the last couple of years now, you started doing lots of other things too. Quote, in your spare time. You were telling me you've gotten into acting over the last couple of years. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I've definitely dabbled in acting and modeling in the media world, and one of the major jobs I do right now is media marketing. So I do campaigns for companies to show off how to, use specific products in order to live a full life. So, for example, I drove cross country by myself this year, the second time doing it, but the first time doing it by myself, and got to drive all around the U.S. and experience what it was like in an adaptive van of learning how to travel alone in a chair.
Did the company supply the van?
They did, yeah.
Wow, that's
They
pretty exciting
did.
stuff, though.
So it's interesting being in this world of showing, being an influencer and showing people how to, like I said, how to use what's available to them in the best way possible to overcome a quote unquote disability and just be able to do whatever they set their mind to.
Well, it's like I saw a couple of years ago. I gave them the credit. Target, I think, was the first one to actually have ads with somebody in a wheelchair. Then we were talking off the air, get reaction to it. The Tony Awards, where the woman won a Tony Award, right?
Yes,
and she was in a
she
wheelchair.
did. The first woman to win a Tony Award who uses a wheelchair, which was huge for that community. But it's amazing being able to see someone who looks like you in the media and in the ads you watch and the shows that you see. So I'm a huge advocate of people getting out there and doing those things. And in regard to what your earlier point was with acting, I did just act in a music video in Nashville. Got back last week from doing that. And basically, the storyline is about this couple and how you see this loving relationship that they have, but you only see her in situations where she's not using the chair, and then it's revealed that she uses a wheelchair, and how love can really be beyond the things that are challenges for us or the things that other people might judge us for, and can be true and pure just because of the two hearts.
Was this based on a song or somebody?
It was, yeah. So I got to work with American Idol star Gabby Barrett on this music video. For any of you who are fans of hers.
Oh, so it was her video?
It was her music video, and it was...
How cool.
Yeah, it was
Is this out now, or is it available?
It'll be released in a couple months, so...
You'll let me know when it is.
Yeah, I definitely will.
Oh, is that great? Mm-hmm. So is that the first music video?
It's the first music video I've done, and definitely an experience. It's a long day. You're filming for about 16 hours
but you
in a day.
You weren't singing?
I didn't sing in that, no. I do love to sing, though.
Well, let's talk about that, too. So, again, we're juggling a couple things here. So my second guest, I don't know if he's in, so we may just be talking to you for a while. You got some time?
I've got some time.
Okay.
Let's go.
Well, I won't have you sing, or you won't have to speak to German. But even that, so you not only speak German, you also speak what else?
Spanish as well.
Okay, English too?
Some English.
Some English?
It's passable.
And some Pig Latin?
Some Pig Latin. Yeah, I think that was the first language I learned with my cousins.
Okay. But you knew they had kind of a talent on it. So the acting, so you did the YouTube video. You also mentioned, or you'd wanted to be in high school. Were you in a production? I think you were telling me.
Yeah, so that was probably another one of the big catalysts for me as far as growing and feeling like I had a voice. Because I remember being in high school and being too nervous to audition for theater because I didn't think that they would accept me because I used a wheelchair and I couldn't get on stage on my own because there were too many steps. And
So, by the way, how did they handle that?
well, what I ended up doing for that specific scenario was applying anyway, forcing myself to.
Good.
One of the things I like to say is just have those 5 seconds of courage when you want to do something, even if you're scared. Just have 5 seconds of being completely brave and going for it, and then it's already done. And so that was my audition, and ended up getting one of the main roles. And so for every single practice, they carried me down a whole flight of stairs down to the stage and would have to help me in the bathroom backstage and then carry me back up. And I had to overcome a lot of those feelings of embarrassment, like you were talking about with the guy, because I was following one of my dreams and I had to get over caring what people thought of me, and ended up finding a side of myself that I loved, who was able to get on stage and not be afraid of anyone else's opinion.
I'm surprised you said that they didn't just have a ramp for you, or couldn't they have done that? Yeah.
It was such a long, flight
Oh,
of
was it
stairs.
really?
They couldn't have done a ramp. And it's another example of how you would think an institution would have had access, but they didn't. And so while we're such an amazing country with, an amazing ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, we still have a ways to go. It's not perfect. So
And this wasn't that long ago. You know, when
yeah,
you
this
think
was
about
only
this.
several years ago.
So, what was the show?
Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, was it really?
Yes, one of my favorite books too. So
Was it the musical version or the other version?
just the normal version without song. So I was Jane Bennett, for those of you who like the book.
That was cool, though. So that was the first thing you win. Let me just take a break here. I want to just mention a couple of things.
Of course.
That one, support for this show and WPVM is underwritten by the Grail Movie House, Asheville's alternative cinema. Grail Movie House is an independent, locally owned 3-screen cinema located in downtown Asheville. For current features and other information, you go to the Grail website, which is grailmoviehouse.com, or the Grail social media pages. In addition, I'd like to mention 2 shows coming up in the area. I was telling our guests, someday I'd love to see you acting on the Asheville scene. But 2 shows coming up in the area. There's going to be a concert called Imagine, a community concert benefit the Haywood Street Fresco, and that's going to be on August 4th at Diana Wortham Theater. And for information on that, you can go to dwtheater.com, and theater spelled, I believe, the correct way, theatre.com. In addition, at the BB Theater, there's going to be a show, and the Devotees, that's it. And it's going to be at the BB Theater, hosted by the Sublime Theater and Press. Information on that, you can go to devotees.brownpapertickets.com. And that should be an interesting show. That's coming up, starting and running from August 1st to the 10th. Back to our guest. So I can also see something else for you in your spare time. I see a book, or have you thought about that, or have people talked to you about that?
I've definitely thought about that. Yes, I've actually talked to a publishing company about what that would take, and it's certainly a large investment of time, but I think that it's something you could definitely expect from me in the coming years. And I believe when you have very unique experiences like I have, it's important to share them so that people can see the truth of what life is like in with somebody with a disability. And I'm excited to share some of those stories, hopefully in a TED Talk coming up, a TEDx Talk coming up as well. But
Can I
yeah.
disagree with you respectfully on the book? I'm going to give you an idea here.
Oh, of course.
That you already mentioned you have a Facebook page. You have your personal Facebook page.
Yes,
You have one for the organization as well.
I do.
Do you blog at all?
I haven't really been blogging as
Okay.
much.
Food for thought, and I'd be glad to help you with this as well. In my other life, this is kind of what I do. I work with different people through a group called SCORE and Mount Bizworks.
Oh, you were with BizWorks?
Yeah, Mount Bizworks, AB Tech, working with small
Wow.
businesses.
Yeah.
But the idea I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to encourage you
All
to do
right.
this,
Share away.
is to blog. And another name I'll give you by a guy named Seth Godin, Godin. He's a very famous blogger. But the point I'm trying to share with you, you don't have to write the book tomorrow. You just start blogging. And it doesn't have to be 750 words. It can be 500 words. It can be 250 words. It can be 100 words. But you put your ideas down or your experiences down, put it on your Facebook page, get people interested in it, reading about it, and then that leads to the book, if that makes any sense.
That does. Yeah, that comes to a really important marketing principle that I've
Right.
been looking at is actually instead of recreating content over and over, that you use the content you make
Right.
to build other content.
Bingo.
So that's a fantastic
But you have
idea.
such a great story, and I want to know more about it, And
Yeah.
like just a story. So all the things you're talking about on the air, just little small chunks. You just talk about, hey, in your childhood, 10 years old, I went through this experience, and it helped me grow. And
Yeah.
then you had the first whatever. But that would be something you could do. Also, the other thing for your first book, now, I mean, you could do it with a publisher, the traditional route, but Amazon has made it so easy. I just
To
published a book.
self-publish.
Yeah, and there's no cost. I don't know if you know about that, but you just publish it, and there's no
Oh.
cost whatsoever. So it used to be, if you couldn't get a publisher, and let's go that route, but you could also self-publish it, or they had what they call vanity press. They were very expensive. You had like 1,000 copies of the book, and get it that way. But you could be a published author tomorrow and sell your book, but just what you said, you're on target, the little small
Yeah.
pieces of it.
Well, you bring up another important point of the fact that everything is changing in the way that we
Right.
consume information and media, and it's so much easier to self-publish your own content and for people to be able to access it. So you don't always have to go the traditional route in order to succeed and get your message out there.
Well, I don't want to tell you about that guy Godin. He does word for word what you said. He
Yeah.
writes these blog entries, and then every year he sort of puts them together into a book. His ideas.
wow.
But I'd like to see you doing that. Where I have a blog. I'll even publish. I'm going to encourage you. Your first piece, or your first 500 words or 250 that you put on Facebook. I'd love to publish it. Your story.
Yeah.
Just what a great story to tell and to share. Have you ever the TED Talk? Is that your plan to tell your whole life story?
Well, it's going to be a part of my story, but then how I've worked with what I've gone through to be able to share a bigger message. So, one of my bigger plans is to be able to convey the message of using your weaknesses or perceived weaknesses as strengths and how to be able, the steps to be able to do that.
I mean, just listening to this, so I see, like you said, perhaps 2 or 3 different stories, or 2 different, or 3 different parts of this.
Yes.
What do you see going in the future? Where do you see, other than this book we're talking about, what other things do you see yourself doing in the future?
Well, I am actually doing something that you've already been encouraging, and that's getting back into the theater and the acting world in an interesting way. And I'm currently writing a screenplay.
Okay, about your life?
No, but it's for Disney actually, to be able to share the story in a different way. I can't share too much.
Okay, that's sure.
But something I'm very excited about, and yes, very much influenced by my life story.
Very cool. And somebody in a wheelchair will be in it?
Yes.
Okay, that have to be the
Yeah.
fact. What about folks, in terms of, we'll talk about your organization again, too. Do you work with, in terms of like athletics, for example? I don't know, were you ever an athlete?
I was never really that athletic, to be honest. Even though I was injured in the car accident when I was 10. So it didn't give me too many years to blossom in that aspect, but I think I found my own athleticism in a different way. For any of you who follow me on social media, you know that I'm a bit of a adventure seeker. So I've been skydiving several times now. I've been base jumping and rock climbing and kayaking and skiing and surfing and all these things you wouldn't think somebody in a wheelchair could do. But I found a way to do it somehow and work with organizations that promote that. So I found my own athletic drive in that.
Well, I was so impressed you were telling me also off the air with your friend that's out there. Can we mention his name or just first name? We'll just say
Yes, yes.
I wanted to put him on the air, but he didn't want to be on the air with us here. But he was telling me, so the two of you went skydiving?
We did, yeah. So I'd already been twice before, and I told him he's my boyfriend, and I told him that if we were really going to be serious, that he had to skydive with me.
And so he
So
did?
I threw down the challenge, and he did. He went with me.
Well,
We jumped together.
now together or you each were with separate people?
Well, we were with different
Right.
tandem jumpers, but we jumped practically at the same time, so I got to see each other as we were flying through the air, and it was an amazing experience.
Now, did they take the video of it also?
Oh, we did.
Yeah, you have to,
Yeah, you
right.
see his pure terror
Yeah, exactly.
and my joy.
Yeah, well, I was there too, and the funniest thing, you see the face flapping in the wind or
I know
something.
you look almost deformed when you're flying through the air so
Yeah.
fast.
Well, that's probably also, I guess, a freeing experience for you because when you
Yeah.
did that, you didn't have the wheelchair. Is that correct?
Exactly. And when you look at a lot of the activities that I do, it's not in a wheelchair. It's outside of it. If I'm kayaking, I leave the wheelchair on the shore and go out in the water alone. Or when I'm skiing or surfing, you're just using whatever device you need and are just getting out in the outdoors or the wilderness and experiencing in a new way that I couldn't in the chair. So I think regardless of what you're dealing with in your life, for me, mine's a physical disability. It's very obvious. But you might have something you're dealing with that's not obvious. But if you can find a way to get out and just leave either the physical equipment behind or just the emotional baggage behind and just get out and find a place where you can find peace and do something that really stretches you, it will help you to really grow and overcome a lot of those things that are holding you back.
Well, that also would indicate too. I guess you probably have a lot of upper body strength, or
Yes.
especially you do rock climbing too.
Yeah. So you have to be pretty strong to keep up with that for an hour straight.
Because I admire wheelchair athletes, but at the same token, that they can, do, I guess, anything you want.
Exactly.
If you don't, I guess, put the barriers, I mean, basketball players you've seen, but like golfers, it's just kind of cool that you just decide what you want to do. Is that what you do in your life? You just say you want to do something and you just do it?
And then you just do it. Yes. Yes, sir, that is.
What's your next physical challenge? Do you have it in mind yet?
I do. So so Drew and I have decided that we want to go shark cage diving in Florida, and we're hoping to do that over the next month. And he wants to go free diving with the sharks.
Yeah.
I'm a little nervous about that, but we might try that out. I can actually swim pretty well, believe it or not. So I don't know if I could swim away from a shark
Right.
if they were really chasing me, but
So what do you guys stay up at night thinking what you're going to do
yeah,
next?
we're always planning our next adventure.
Oh, is that cool?
It is.
In terms of traveling around then, so you were telling me also off the air that you just recently completed a trip where you went like a whole bunch of countries in
So we
12 days?
We did. We went to Europe and just rented a car and started driving. And we had quite a few adventures, for sure. Probably one of the most notable was that we were hit by a biker in the Netherlands. A biker came out of nowhere and hit our car. And then when he fell on the ground, I thought, for sure. I was like, oh no, he's dead. We've gotten this incident where we've killed a biker. Well, he ended up being fine, but then almost got in a fist fight with another driver behind us because the driver was honking at us for staying still because we were dealing with a biker. And so it just ended up going into this whole process in Holland where we were with the police and trying to get out of there as quickly as possible. But it just goes to show sometimes you have some things that happen when you're traveling and you can't always control it. Just got to go with it.
Reminds me of one of my favorite movies. I'll encourage the two of you to see, called Sliding Doors. Have you ever heard of the movie?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it though.
Beautiful premise, a little bit like your story you just told, and it's the fact that a woman, Gwyneth Paltrow, catches a train and her life goes one direction. But if you miss the train, your life goes in a different direction.
Oh yeah.
Back to your accent. It'd be a beautiful movie for you to see, because had that not happened, your life would have gone one direction, and then it goes in a different direction, but it all sort of comes together.
Exactly. And then you can't, I think as humans, we can't help but ask the question, what if? What would have happened in my life if this bad thing never happened? And that's one of the questions I had to really stop myself from asking for several years after the accident because it was just too hard. But now, when I look at asking that question, I'm can't help but feel happy that it happened because of the person that I am now, and I wouldn't take it back.
And you wouldn't have had all these experiences.
Exactly.
You know, I'm also thinking out loud with you, almost like the book title or your story title, the TED Talk, My Amazing Life, or some variation of that.
Yeah.
You've had an amazing life.
Thank you.
And I guess it's changed since you were 10 years old.
It definitely has. It definitely has. And one of the next adventures that's probably most important to mention is my upcoming competition in Miss North Carolina, USA.
Wait, so it's another pageant you entered?
Yes.
In your spare time?
Yep. So I know I have all these different passions, but so as I mentioned earlier, I was Miss Wheelchair USA, and while in this pageant, I had a lot of people come up and say, "Well, why wouldn't you compete in the normal, quote unquote, normal pageant for the Miss USA or Miss America track?" And I would always say, "No, I couldn't do that. That would never be something that they would accept, or I don't think I could ever have a chance of winning." So last year, I actually competed for the first time, and in the Miss North Carolina system. And it was such an amazing experience because I was there with girls who, had legs a mile long, walking down the runway, but I was holding my own while wheeling on stage and was able to just find and channel a whole other side of myself. And it wasn't about the beauty aspect as much as it was becoming the best version of myself in every way. And now I get to compete in Miss North Carolina USA this November.
So back it up. So that was, which competition was the one you were in?
So it was Miss North Carolina last year as well, and I'm competing again this year.
That was the first time you did it?
Yes.
And that's based on the interview, or is there a talent aspect of that as well?
So it's 3 parts. You have your interview, your gown, and then swimsuit, which can be controversial, but it's really about your fitness level. And I had to work out harder than I've ever worked out in my life to prepare for that competition, which I'm doing right now, honestly. But really it all comes down to how you portray yourself in the interview. And so I was able to make the top 15 last year, and I'm excited to go back again this year and see what I can do.
And were you the only woman in a wheelchair?
Yes, I was. I was the first girl ever to compete in a wheelchair.
Isn't that cool in terms of the things you've done? That's another thing that, just to even think about, your firsts, that you've been the first to do so many different things. Is that exciting for you?
It is. I hope that I'm encouraging people to reach inside themselves and see that they can do more than they expected, just like I've been able to do more than I've expected. And I've honestly seen several other girls end up competing in different states because of watching my journey.
What,
so
in
wheelchairs. So that was really exciting to see as well.
It seems also that you don't, I guess, anymore put yourself down as saying you can't do anything. It almost seems like your whole life is trying to show that you can do just about anything you want to do.
Exactly. We all have that, like, mean girl in our head, our mean boy, if you're a guy, who's always going to tell us things that aren't true about ourselves or that are negative or that we can't do something. And you have to realize you have control of your thoughts, and it's up to you to stop those and replace them with positive, empowering thoughts. And that's where it starts. That it's not doing something big right off the bat. It's being able to take control of what you tell yourself every day about your abilities, no matter how old you are, no matter what your physical ability is, no matter what your economic status is, that you are capable of doing amazing things if you believe in your ability and then act on it with creativity and persistence.
It's so cool. You just came up with this like on your own, or did you have you done a lot of reading about positive thinking and that whole thing?
I definitely try to educate myself as much as possible and read the thoughts of other people, but this is also from trial and error and experience and what works.
I mean,
So,
have you read other books about people who have been in wheelchairs or have been impacted?
I have read a couple of books and seen several documentaries. I love it when people do the impossible. That's what inspires me the most, is when people go after impossible dreams and they make it happen. And one of my favorite stories is the man who first ran the 4-minute mile.
Right. Yeah.
How everybody thought it was just that it was physically impossible to run a mile in 4 minutes. And then this one man did it, and then hundreds of people started doing it after that. And it just goes to show it is about what we believe is true that defines what our reality is going to be. And so if you believe without a shadow of doubt that you can't do something, well, you're not going to be able to do it. But if you believe that you can, that's going to open all of your possibilities
So just
in your world.
speaking to you, it doesn't seem that there aren't too many things you don't believe you can do.
I try not to set limits on myself too much, for
I mean,
sure.
I could see all these different things you could be doing. I could see we'll have you enter the political arena at some time. Have you ever thought of that?
Well, this year I got the privilege to speak to several members of our U.S. Senate
Oh,
in
really?
D.C.,
Wow.
and that was very humbling for me to be able to be the voice for North Carolina and for people with disabilities and what the reality is behind what daily life can look like regarding certain legislation issues. And like I said earlier, something may seem small to you starting out, like if you have something you want to fix. And it may seem like a small first step that you're doing, whether it's going to someone in your local government or just making a meeting, but that can lead to such bigger things. And you just have to start somewhere, and then before you know it, like me, you can be going to DC and talking to the people who run the country.
You could go to Germany or into a Shark Tank or
In a
you
Shark
name it.
Tank, you never know.
Wow. If people go to your Facebook page or do you have a website also?
My main website right now is the organizational website, Live Boundless, but Facebook's probably the best place to see my journey, or Instagram if you're on there.
Well, let's talk about both. So the website is what?
liveboundless.org.
Okay, and they can find out about the organization or getting involved.
Yes.
You also have, I think you said 2 Facebook pages. You have your personal Facebook page, or do you have an organization?
Yeah, or the Live Boundless Facebook page. If you want to follow my personal adventures
Right.
and get to see all of these journeys unfold, and especially as I prepare for the competition as Miss Asheville, you can go to Madeline Elizabeth Delp on Facebook or Instagram and find me that way.
Now, if they go to there, are there any videos of you also?
Yes, there's a lot of videos. You can see me base jumping or skydiving.
I'd love to see that.
You
Yeah.
can see my first role on stage as Miss North Carolina at Miss North Carolina USA, where I was rolling down a ramp and caught a little too much speed and almost ran right off of the stage into the judges. I think I scared them quite a
I was
bit.
gonna say that's one way to make an impression.
They did. They didn't forget me. I can tell you that. So you can definitely see a lot of videos of things you probably haven't seen before.
And they'll also be able to see this interview in a couple of
Yes,
days
they
on
will.
Facebook. It's live.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go specifically then to the Asheville area. So you're doing some things in the Asheville area as well. Anything we can look forward to?
Well, I will be hosting an event in October, details pending, for my as Miss Asheville in partnership with Aeroflow Healthcare. And it's going to be basically a launch party before I go to Miss North Carolina. And I want to be able to invite anyone who's interested in coming to support me from Asheville and get to have a meet and greet together. So if you go to my personal pages, the Live Boundless page, you'll be able to see more information about that over the coming weeks.
Do you have a date yet for that?
I don't have an official date.
So I think we mentioned all the other competitions. I don't think we had mentioned Miss Asheville. So you're now the current Miss Asheville?
Yes, I'm currently Miss Asheville.
What was that all about?
So basically, I was chosen as the Asheville representative by the Miss North Carolina organization.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they were pretty impressed with my performance last year and wanted to have me back, which was an honor, and now I get to serve Asheville again for another year.
So if anybody also wants to have a ribbon cutting or a
Yes,
picture
please
opportunity,
call me.
You'll be available.
Yes, I didn't wear the sash and crown today because we're on radio, but I guess Facebook Live I should have, huh?
Oh, so you have an official
I
sash
have an official sash and crown and everything, yes.
and crown. So as you prepare for, you were saying that you prepare for the Miss North Carolina competition.
Mm-hmm.
And when's that going to be?
That's going to be November 8th and 9th in High Point, North Carolina.
And talk a little bit about you're saying preparation for it. So you're actually preparing for it?
For sure.
How do you prepare for it?
So it's a very intense competition. They want to be able to see that you are the most well-rounded woman you can possibly be. And a lot of people have certain opinions of pageants that maybe they're a little more superficial, but the reality is you have to be on top of your game professionally,
Sure.
with your communication skills, with how you're involved in your community, and what you're doing to be able to actually do good in your world. And then when they're looking for your onstage performance, it's not just of, oh, how pretty is she? It's how does she hold herself? How does she display confidence and grace and really connect with the audience? So that's what they're going to be looking for. And in my preparation for that, I'm very much training on an interview level and a communication level. Even being on this radio show today is amazing practice in conveying my thoughts and points about what I'm working on in very powerful ways, right? So it's I'm meeting with a lot of local people and influencers to be able to be the best version of myself that I can be and learn.
Great message. To wrap up, Madeline, if anybody, again, wants to get more information about you, there are the two ways you mentioned. There's the website is, again, what?
Yeah, so just go to liveboundless.org. And again, that is the name of my nonprofit organization, but there's a direct contact to me. And then you can also reach me at any of my social media platforms and Facebook and Instagram. And my name, again, is Madeline Elizabeth Delp.
I'd like to thank you, Madeline Elizabeth Delp, for being my guest this whole
My pleasure.
show on the Blainsboro Show. I'd also like to thank Amy Prisnash, my producer, and to Zuzu Welsh, who provided the music you heard at the beginning of the show and you'll now be hearing at the end. Look forward to having you join me next Wednesday at 9 a.m. here on the new WPVM LP in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen on online at WPVMFM.org and watch us on WPVM's Facebook page. If you're a friend of Madeline's, this show will be rebroadcast on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock at the same time, and we hope to see you next week. Thanks for listening, folks.
Bye.